With any long-running franchise, everyone's going to have their takes on what the best and worst installment is. And that's a very fun thing to discuss with someone, seeing why you like something they didn't, or why you didn't like something the other did. But with this movie, I think everyone unanimously agrees that this is at least in the top 3 worst movies of the entire Halloween series. Yep, that title is not clickbait. I genuinely do not like this movie. And you know, I think that's really kind of a shame. I wanted to like it. I don't go into any movie wanting to hate it because I don't really find that fair. But I was hoping that it would be on par with Halloween 3, which I think is pretty good, or bare minimum Halloween 4, which I think is kind of meh. Here's a little anecdote. This is one of the only movies I've ever watched that took me several days to finish because I simply couldn't bring myself to watch it in one sitting. That's how much I was despising it. Oh, and before I properly start, here's my quick thoughts on Halloween 5. I've had the DVD of this movie for the better part of 5 years, and I still haven't opened it. That should tell you how much I like this movie. This movie really felt like the beginning of the end of the series to me. Everything felt so repetitive. The direction felt very uninspired. The bulk of the movie is just Jamie Lloyd inside of a mental hospital as Michael very slowly stalks his way towards her. And not just that, but the movie introduces a new mysterious character named the Man in Black, who we occasionally see and is the cause for Michael's inevitable escape at the end, but they don't really go anywhere with it. I also hate how quickly they disposed of Rachel in this movie. Even though I thought 4 was meh, the dynamic between Rachel and Jimmy was legitimately one of the best parts of that movie to me. And then what do? They just go and kill her off purely to replace her with a new character who's basically her, but significantly more annoying.
Hey! Open up! It looks so good. Oh, Max, shut up your canine trap!
Now, I would say more, but the thing is, I just can't. And the reason I can't is because not very much happens in this movie. I'm serious. There is very little plot development in the entire thing. The only other thing I can think of is that it is short, and there's one pretty decently suspenseful encounter with Michael in a laundry chute. But other than that, I just got nothing. Quick disclaimer, if you like this movie, that's perfectly fine. I'm not even joking right now. If you actually like this movie, then please, by all means, go ahead and enjoy it, like what you like. It doesn't affect me one way or the other. I'm just here to give you reasons on why I personally don't like the movie. Now, I am aware that there is an alternate producer's cut of the movie that I've heard is marginally better and does fix some of the issues that I'm going to address. But here's the thing. The version of the movie I watched, the theatrical cut, is the version that was released in theaters and is the version most people would have seen. And I don't really feel like watching any other version of this movie more than I already have up to this point. So I'll just stop stalling and begin with... After watching the first 5 movies, it became very obvious that the formula they used was becoming very tired and stale. So going into part 6, I can understand why they'd want to shake it up from just a serial killer stalking and killing because he can. So what do they change it with? Well, now they have a serial killer stalking and killing people because now he's being manipulated by a cult from behind the scenes in order for them to gain full control over him, orchestrating the capture of his niece, having her carry a child, murdering her, and using said child in order to attain full power by using constellations and ruins, all in an attempt to break an ancient family curse. Yeah, I'm well aware my explanation made no sense and was very convoluted, but blame the movie for making it that convoluted in the first place. I honestly don't think I would hate this movie as much if a lot of the cult plotline was streamlined and the explanations they gave actually fit in with the lore that was established in the first few Halloween movies. Spoiler alert, it doesn't fit. They tried to connect Tommy Doyle's landlord in this movie back to the first one by saying that she was actually Michael's babysitter and the reason he killed his sister was because he heard a voice which made him kill. But hang on, 2 points. One, Why are they trying to explain Michael's reason for killing when the entire reason he was an interesting character is because he was just a normal kid who snapped and decided to kill? I mean, I know Halloween 2 tried to give him some reasoning by making Laurie his sister, but it didn't fundamentally change why it was happening, because he kills a lot more people than just his family in these movies. And 2, how could this old lady have been Michael's babysitter in the opening to Halloween, when the whole opening was about how his sister was babysitting him, and he was waiting till she was alone to kill her? Well, I mean, she was technically looking after someone else at that time. But regardless, this is just a case of pointless retconning which adds nothing to the series. Speaking of pointless additions, why was a cult even needed? Think of it. You already have a menacing villain in the form of Michael Myers. He is presented as an unstoppable killing machine, killing people on Halloween because he can. He can survive being shot, stabbed, burned alive, and having dynamite thrown on him. So why bring in some sort of cult out of left field as a means to give Michael motivation when, as previously stated, the fact that he didn't have any motivation and just killed for killing's sake was more than enough? In fact, not only does the cult's inclusion feel so unnecessary, but their plans actually make no sense, because not only are they trying to control Michael, but it's also hinted at throughout the movie that they're trying to use this little kid named Danny and turn him into the next Michael Myers. But how does that make any sense? They already have control, or at least slight control, of Michael, so why would they want to replace him? I know he ends up killing them near the end of the movie anyway, but that just comes so out of left field it doesn't make any sense, because the cult wanted the baby to die, and Michael wanted the baby to die. Even though I was just praising how Michael works because he doesn't have any explanation to him, you can't throw something like that to the audience and expect them to buy it if what they've seen in the rest of the movie doesn't fit with what's being shown. Since we're on the subject, I think trying to give backstory or motive to mysterious characters, or characters who function well enough without it, rarely ever works out and can sometimes make those characters less interesting, because now the audience is privy to that information, so any mystery or question behind that character is now just gone. I'm going to give you an example of a good mysterious character who didn't get ruined from a franchise that I like, that being Clint Eastwood's character from Sergio Leone's Dollars trilogy. Throughout the trilogy, Eastwood's character remains enigmatic, and his motives remain relatively unclear. You know he has some compassion and he's intelligent, like when he helps the family in the first film. But we know he is also out for monetary gain, like with the hanging scheme he does with Tuco, and him taking some of the gold at the end of the third movie. But the films never explicitly explain his actions. They allow for us, the audience, to infer his motives from scenes and subtext, and his actions show he isn't entirely good or bad. Also, each movie gives him a different name. In Fistful, it's Joe. In a few more, it's Monko. And in The Good, the Bad, and the Ugly, it's Blondie. The fact that he has all of these names just adds to the mystery of this lone cowboy who travels across the desert, but they never reveal the backstory or any subsequent motive because it's not important to the narrative. Do you think if he randomly started recounting his backstory halfway through the first movie that it would have made it a better film? Absolutely not, but whatever. I guess the writer for Halloween 6 just wanted to include a cult in the movie, which, I mean, is fine, but they should have at least tried to properly explain what the cult's ultimate goal was, because, as I said, it makes no sense. I think it was either to control Michael or take the kid and turn him into their own personal Michael. That's another plot point that also doesn't make any sense. So apparently, after the police massacre during the climax of Halloween 5, Jamie Lloyd and Michael were abducted by the cult, and the cult waited years for her to get pregnant. Now, I'm not really sure who the baby's father is because the movie leaves it kind of ambiguous until you get to the last act. In the last act, the movie pulls one shot out of its ass and shows a baby inside a test tube. I think it's trying to imply that they were experimenting with genetics, but it doesn't really matter in the long run because Jamie is now under their care, and it means that when the baby is born, Michael can kill the two of them and break the curse. Now, I have a few questions about that. Why does Jamie even have a baby? If the ultimate point from Michael, as stated up to this point, is to destroy his bloodline, why didn't they just help Michael to try to kill her during the events of Halloween 5, instead of waiting to the last second, abducting them, and then letting them mill around for a few years in this random underground bunker? Doesn't adding a newborn just make more work for both the cult and Michael to do? Why couldn't they have just killed Jamie at any point in the 6 years between films? And why even bother killing the baby? If they wanted to have their own Michael Myers, as we saw they attempted to do with Danny, then wouldn't it have made more sense to try and replicate what happened to Michael with this new kid? Because, little tiny newborn babies are very impressionable, and they almost definitely could have made him the new Michael if they put any amount of effort or thought into their plan, especially since he comes from Michael's bloodline. And we saw at the end of Halloween 4 how Jamie tried to kill her foster mother by stabbing her to death. So the series does imply how there definitely is some sort of evil in Michael's bloodline. And how exactly have they been controlling Michael for the past 6 years that elapsed between movies if he was still kind of under his own free will? I mean, at least enough control for him not to want to kill them in that time. I mean, this part is also partially on part 5 for introducing that stupid Thorn subplot and the idea that there is people who can control or at least somewhat aid Michael. It doesn't explain at all how he was being manipulated when none of the previous installments before 5 or 6 showed him acting under any other person's influence. So again, was Michael partially under their control? Was he fully under their control? Or was the cult's plan and Michael's eventual turn against the cult just very lazy writing? That one will be for you to decide. This section is actually going to be a lot shorter than the first one, mainly because there's just not that many returning characters in this movie, or ones that at least matter. The only relevant characters that returned are Jamie, Dr. Loomis, Michael, and Tommy Doyle. With that said, goddamn did most of them get the short end of the stick in this movie. In the first 2 Halloweens, Dr. Loomis was a very important part of the story. He was Michael's psychiatrist and the only one who could see the evil that was inside of him the whole time. So he went around Haddonfield warning anyone who would listen to stay safe as to not be killed in Michael's massacre. Despite Jamie Lee Curtis's Laurie Strode being the lead in both movies, he effectively acted as a secondary protagonist and may have even gotten more screen time than Curtis in Halloween 2. But unfortunately, Loomis was reduced to a crazy person in Halloween 5 who now screams at little girls and uses them as bait to trap Michael.
Tell me what you know. Yeah, right. We both know he's alive, but you know where he is. What about your stepmother, Jamie? You love her, don't you? He made you stab her.
Let's play a game. Catch the little girl. Catch. Mike. Oh.
Now we arrive at Halloween 6, and it would be a good time to mention that this is Donald Pleasance's final movie as Dr. Loomis. Following the completion of principal photography, he unfortunately passed away. So because of this, Loomis as a character could not be included in the extensive reshoots that went on for this movie. And that pretty much explains why Pleasance is barely in this movie at all. At most, he is in this movie for a grand total of 7 or 8 minutes. Or at least that's what it feels like. I understand that not every character needs to have an excessive amount of screen time, and you can do a lot in that short period. I mean, look at Darth Vader. In the original Star Wars, he was only on screen for 8 minutes and became instantly iconic, so it is possible to have a small role that can make a large impact. But since Loomis appears only very sporadically throughout the first 2 acts and then entirely disappears from the climax, Loomis doesn't get a whole lot to do in his final appearance. And the truth is, not all of his diminished screen time was because of his passing. No, apparently they had quite a bit more footage of Pleasance, but director Joe Chappelle found his scenes to be too boring and so they were cut. That's gotta be one of the biggest FUs I have ever heard, especially considering that the movie is dedicated to his memory. Seems like a really dick move if you ask me. Moving on to the character of Tommy Doyle, who in this movie is played by Paul Rudd, and by God, what an unfortunate performance. Throughout the entire movie, Rudd acts in this stalker or predator type manner. He spies on the main girl while she changes and is obsessed with all things ruins. Because of course he is. Now, that part isn't a dig at his performance, more so the lack of characterization from the screenwriters, but Rudd's performance does that lack of characterization no favors whatsoever. He talks in this very staccato tone of voice throughout the entire thing, up until like the climax where he just loses it and starts laughing like a psycho. I'm just glad that he went on to do, well, anything after this. And let's quickly talk about Jamie Lloyd. Would you believe me that they somehow managed to nerf her even worse than she already was in Halloween 5? Yeah, I'm not kidding. After giving birth to her baby in the opening scene, She escapes and is almost immediately killed by Michael in the most disgusting manner possible, getting impaled on a piece of farm equipment before Michael activates it and mutilates her insides. Good God, that is such a brutal and disrespectful way to kill off the lead of your two previous movies. I know I said that Halloween 4 was only okay, and while I stand by that, Jamie Lloyd was still one of the bright spots of that movie, and seeing her character just get broken down movie after movie is so depressing. Her parents were killed, her foster sister was killed, her dog was killed, her friend was killed. She became a mute, she got captured by a cult, she was forcefully impregnated and then got murdered. And what makes all of that even worse, she's only supposed to be around 15 or 16 when she dies in this movie. That's gotta be one of the single saddest journeys I've ever seen for any fictional character in any medium. Now on to our final returning character, Michael Myers. I know I already said how much I don't like the needless explanation for his motives because he doesn't need one. If I can divorce myself from that stupidity for just a second, he's definitely the character that got the least abused in this film. He does still feel like a brutal killing machine and delivers some legitimately good kills. Not only that, but his mask is a major step up from the horrendous looking ones in the past two installments. His physicality is also quite good, which I think might have been helped by the fact that he was played by actor George Wilbur, who returned after playing Michael in Halloween 4. And you know what? He does a good job. It's a nice bit of continuity. So I really got no complaints on that end. On to I've clumped these two into the same point mainly because I feel it contributes to the whole overall problem, and I want to know who edited this movie. I am not kidding. The editing in this movie is downright atrocious. Let me give you a quick example. You know how in other movies, scenes transition between themselves using, a straight cut or dissolve? Well, no. Not for this movie. This movie transitions between scenes using a montage of inserts from other points in the movie. Almost every single transition has the same montage play. And it gets so annoying so fast. Oh, and very sorry, but possible seizure warning from anyone suffering from photosensitive epilepsy. So just close your eyes for the next 5 to 10 seconds, and then when I tell you, you can open them again. Or, you could just never watch this movie and never have to deal with it. But here it is. Every single time. And I don't even know why they do it. It's not like it provides any new information or new context for scenes that already passed. No, it is just a jumbled mess of a transition. Thank God the movie is only 90 minutes because I could not have taken 2 or 2.5 hours of this bullshit. So at the very least, my painful experience didn't drag on for too long. That being said, this terrible editing did not make this incoherent and mess of a movie any less messy or incoherent. Case in point. The climax of this movie is, for lack of a better term, anticlimactic. It officially kicks off with the reveal that the Man in Black is actually Loomis's old co-worker Terrence Wynn. Yeah, a man who we only saw for 15 seconds in the original Halloween and quite literally only had 2 scenes leading up to the big reveal. After that, the final girl, Kara, jumps out of a window and gets captured by the cult. Loomis and Tommy rush to Smith's Grove to save her. Loomis confronts Wynn but ends up getting knocked out and isn't seen again until the final 90 seconds of the movie. Michael, for some reason, turns against the cult and kills them all, including Wynn, in a poorly edited, bloody strobe light seizure of a scene. Again, I don't know why he only now decided it was a good idea to kill any of them, considering he probably could have done it at any point in the previous 6 years. And it's such an underwhelming way to not only dispose of the cult, but also the Man in Black, who was teased for 2 movies and amounted to almost nothing. But again, sloppy writing prevails. After that massacre of both the cult and my eyes, Danny, Kara, Paul Rudd, and the baby are chased by Michael, and they get trapped in a weird science-looking room. Paul Rudd, and yeah, I'm calling him Paul Rudd instead of the character's name, decides to give the baby to Michael. But surprise, surprise, it turns out that it was just misdirection, and Rudd instead stabs Michael with a handful of syringes filled with some sort of odd-looking green chemical goop, and proceeds to beat Michael to death with a lead pipe before Michael starts spewing green blood from his mask in another horrendous assault on the senses. You can't make this stuff up. You just can't. Oh, and of course the resolution is sloppy like everything else. It immediately cuts to the gang outside about to drive away. Lewis finally wakes up from his nap, waves goodbye, and then this happens. What is that? No, seriously, what is that ending? It doesn't even feel like an ending. It doesn't wrap up the story in a satisfying or even adequate way. So many important questions are left unanswered. Like, is it implied that Michael killed him? Did Michael assume the identity of the man in black? Why didn't he just follow the gang? And why can't I get those 90 minutes of my life back? But you want to know what the best part about this ending is? This movie did so critically and financially poorly that the next installment became a reboot and ignored everything after the events of Halloween 2, meaning that none of these questions ever got answered. Ladies and gentlemen of the jury, I rest my case. Okay, except for this next thing. This next one is just personal taste, but I'm not really a fan of the score. They decided to go with a more rock-sounding soundtrack as opposed to the subtle instrumental that was in the first few, and for me, it just doesn't really do it. Even though I am a fan of rock, but I don't really think it fits the tone of a Halloween movie. Another point, Kara has family members who I guess are relatives of Laurie Strode, and almost all of them are disposable and do virtually nothing to impact the story. I guess the brother kind of does something because he tells a DJ to go to the Myers house, and that kind of leads into the climax. But the most unfortunate character of the lot is Kara's dad, who is legitimately one of the most unlikable characters you will ever meet. He berates his daughter, slaps her, and spews insults. No wonder Danny tried to pull a knife on him. I would have done the same. And it feels so weird that they decided to name this character and his wife after two of the creators of the original Halloween. Am I the only one who finds that just a little bit weird that they decided to name this asshole of a character after the creators? But I mean, at least this fictional John got to have a very gory and very deserved death scene. Good job, movie. You did one thing right. The final movie of the original Halloween timeline. And by God, what an ass way to go out. Not with a bang, but with a kick to the balls. I've just ranted for the better part of, 20 or 25 minutes saying how much I hate this movie. But is there anything I like in it? Well, the kills are brutally gory when you can actually see it through the editing. Michael's mask looks a lot better than it did in 4 and 5, and he is overall menacing. Donald Pleasance is good even though he only has about 7 minutes of screen time. And you know what? Visually, it doesn't look too bad. It's got some nice colors that pop, and that's about it. The story is way too convoluted. The editing is awful. Paul Rudd is terrible, which is only somewhat his fault. Motivations are contradictory. The villain has no presence. It treats the returning characters poorly. It gives the new characters nothing to do, and the climax is rushed. The ending is so open-ended and confusing, it shouldn't even be classified as an ending, and it's overall just a mess of a movie. I know I said earlier that this movie was very open-ended and it never had a follow-up, but I honestly think it's for the best. There really was no going back from this in the original continuity. You just can't go back to the simplicity that made the original Halloween great. Because of that, I still do think it was the right call to have the 7th movie be a partial reboot and start from a less convoluted point in the timeline. Granted, that timeline also crashed and burned with the release of Resurrection, but I digress. So for all the reasons I just listed, I really can't recommend this movie to anyone. But you are your own person, you can watch it if you choose, and you can form your own opinion about it. But if you have seen it, I'd be interested to hear your thoughts about it in the comments down below, especially from those who saw it, liked it, and want to give me reasons as to why they did. I'm a pretty open-minded person. I'd be curious to hear what you guys say. And remember, everyone is free to have their own opinion on something. If you dislike it, please give your reasons on it, or even if you like it, do the exact same thing. What's important to remember is if you don't like something, Don't do something stupid like going out and sending death threats to the people who made it. You just look like an asshole. Now, if you enjoyed this different type of video, please feel free to give it a thumbs up and hit that subscribe button. I seriously can't thank you guys enough for watching, and please leave a comment down below if you enjoy this review style more than just the standard ones that I do. Regardless, I do really hope you enjoyed it, and I'll see you in the next video. Peace out, have a good day, and bye.